Hello, good morning. Yes, the sun has come up, and as I promised, another thought for the day. Yes, and I think you can, yep, they're still going. So those that don't like it, turn the volume down. Do you know, guys, you often, in your comment, more comments, comment about Filipina from the province, Filipina from the city. Doesn't really matter where they come from, does it? The reality is that we're just looking. We're trying to find that elusive pot of gold. Somebody that we can see a future with here in the Philippines, or even maybe to take home to show the sights of America, Australia, England. America's probably the easiest place to get them back in. Australia, pretty difficult. England, a lot of money. Doesn't seem fair that we find somebody finally in our old age, and where they make it so hard for us to continue with our lives, maybe in our home country, where we have security of good medical, we maybe own a nice house, freehold, but we can't bring our wives back without a lot of major difficulty. As I said, it doesn't seem very fair. But for those that are having their fantasies about living here in the Philippines and retiring, but lack that most important ingredient in their mind, and that is a caring, loving, loyal wife. Maybe hanging around the bars of Angeles City, or wandering around the streets of Dramageddon, maybe aren't the best places to find that long-lasting relationship. Not to say that some of them have worked out, but not necessarily all of them. One of the best places I've found that people have spoken about, I think if you've been to Australia, you'd know what I mean by the expression God botherers. Ooh, that's a heavy word. Well, it describes in American or English terms, Aussies know what I mean, and that is that God botherers are people who promote, spread the word of the gospel around the neighborhood, around the towns and cities, here and everywhere in the world. It's said with a certain amount of jest, especially if you're not one of those God botherers yourself. But that is in itself an indication as to where I'm going. You know, I've attended many a church meeting with the family, and even though I'm not necessarily one to raise my hands up and do all of the gestures that they do in the service, I will listen, especially when the pastor is speaking in English, especially to me. And I recall one pastor with the same name as me, so it became a little bit of a chuckle each time he did it. But looking around the congregation, it's full of faces that I recognize in my barangay. It's also full of faces that I recognize are single mothers where the children have grown up and left home now. Maybe the husband didn't stick around long enough to watch them grow. Or, sadly, some of them are beautiful, nevertheless, women, with the label widow. Now, of course, in America, half of the population, at least, is God-fearing, as they would say. And therefore, part of the fundamentals that they probably are looking for is a woman who has a God-fearing approach to life, one similar to their own, and therefore might suggest that if they're looking for someone like that, rather than going on channels such as dating sites, what do they call it? Something about Christians in the Philippines? I always think that dating sites are for those that are opportunists or desperate. For a good, loyal, honest and truthful woman, I think you will find them more likely in the cathedrals and churches in your neighborhood. And if you are of the religious belief, they are a great place to search out and discover the wealth of abundance of maybe women, maybe, that would consider having you as a companion in their life. I say as a companion because they're not the kind that would just jump into bed and have sex on the first night. They're ones that believe in a Christian way, and that is after marriage. Oh, how boring, says that little group of recent watchers of our channel. Well, I wouldn't put up with that rubbish. Well, this is obviously not aimed at you. This is aimed at the God-fearing, morally good Americans, especially. Yes, sorry, I'm back to Americans again, but not in a negative way. Because if you consider finding a partner, it's always best to have somebody with the same wavelength. Now, intellectually, we might not have the same level of attentiveness between our Filipina and ourselves. If we want to talk about the riots in Portland, Oregon, or we want to talk about the prosecutors out of New York, they're really not interested. You might be best to find somebody of your own kind who can have a debate, an interesting conversation on its own. You can do that, of course, online or by talking with your friends from your country. But back to the point that I'm making. Many of you, or some I should say at least, say it's hard to find the right woman. Well, maybe you need to always look in the right place. Looking in Angeles City for freelancers and bar girls is not always the best. It doesn't always work out like that, but generally speaking, they're not the marrying kind. And therefore, one tends to steer away from that, because that's a joyful time, maybe for the men that frequent these places. And joyful times always end with money coming out of one's pocket to pay for that joyful event, if you follow my meaning. If you are of the God-botherer group, as I say, again, no disrespect to those with religious belief, but if you have that kind of following in your mind and that idea about how to live from the Bible, then clearly you should be looking where your congregation is. If you are of the religious Christian way, then you would be more inclined to attend the church, to seek out the fellowship of those around you. And it is there that you're more likely to find that woman that you're looking for, a traditional woman. And I say traditional in the sense that you will not treat her like a maid. You will not treat her as something that you can order around and do this, do that. They will do it because they want to. A feeling of duty, a feeling of looking after their husband dearly with the greatest of respect. And for those that are just looking for one-night stands, I would think Dumaguete bars and Angeles City bars sit there awaiting you. So you have your fun and you have your disasters afterwards. But for those that are really planning a worthwhile visit with the genuine requirement of finding a good wife, you couldn't look any further than your local church. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up, show your support for my thought for the day, and you have a lovely day. God bless.